What if I told you the hardest part of Bitcoin's price journey was already behind us? Recently on the TFTC podcast, I sat down with Trey Sellers, head of client services at Unchained, one of Bitcoin's leading custody providers, to discuss why breaking $100,000 might be more significant than anyone realizes. Over the last 15 years, Bitcoin has faced endless criticism and doubt. Breaking $100,000 isn't just about a number. It represents a psychological shift that's affecting everyone from regular investors to world leaders. The conversation you're about to hear reveals why major institutions and even nations are now racing to accumulate Bitcoin, and what signals point to $200,000 being closer than most people think. Trey brings unique insights from working directly with high net worth individuals and institutions as they navigate entering the Bitcoin space. His front row seat to Bitcoin adoption gives him a perspective few others have. We're going to break down exactly what this milestone means, why it matters for Bitcoin's future, and what evidence suggests this is just the beginning of a much bigger move. Before we get into it, if you enjoy this type of content, hit the like button and subscribe to stay updated with the latest from the TFTC podcast. You can find the full episode in the description. Now, Bitcoin cracked 6 figures. Let's break down why that matters more than you might think.
We're sitting here today, I believe we're at 102,000 after a slight dip below 100,000 yesterday. And this is pretty profound. I mean, we're talking about the Unchained, the letter that Joe wrote to Unchained clients about the journey that it took to 100,000. I think maybe the context of this conversation and what we're here to talk about tonight, like from your perspective, what has it been like being at Unchained for many years, getting people onboarded to Bitcoin, helping them develop the intestinal fortitude and the understanding to make them comfortable to hold through all the volatility that's existed over the last few years?
We're witnessing a historic moment in Bitcoin's journey. As I discussed with Trey, Bitcoin has just crossed $100,000, a price target that critics said was impossible just a few years ago. But what's really interesting isn't just the price itself, it's how Unchained has helped people stay confident through Bitcoin's ups and downs to reach this point. Their work has been crucial in helping people understand why Bitcoin is worth holding on to, even when prices get volatile. This is particularly important because many people need guidance when they're dealing with substantial amounts of money. Think about it. Going from $0 to $100,000 takes real conviction, and having experienced guides can make all the difference in helping people maintain their confidence through the turbulent times. What's fascinating is how this milestone represents more than just a number. It's a validation of the long-term strategy of accumulating and holding Bitcoin, something Unchained has been helping their clients do for years. Next, Trey explains why breaking $100,000 could fundamentally change how people view Bitcoin's potential.
I think when you cross 100,000, $1 million doesn't seem all that far off anymore, right? In the same way that when you cross 10,000, 100,000 didn't quite seem as far off anymore. And so it's more of a psychological switch where people's perspective can be broadened to say like, oh man, like there is actually a possibility that Bitcoin trades at $1 million at some point in the future, whether that's 5 years from now, 6 years from now, 10, 20, doesn't matter. Like the Overton window has shifted to include the possibility of $1 million Bitcoin.
Yeah. Trey makes a brilliant observation here about market psychology and price milestones. Breaking through $100,000 hasn't just proven critics wrong. It's completely changed how people think about Bitcoin's potential. When you hear him explain it this way, it makes perfect sense. Once people see Bitcoin cross a major milestone they thought was impossible, their minds open to even bigger possibilities. It's similar to how running a 4-minute mile seemed impossible until Roger Bannister did it. Then suddenly many others followed. The way Trey explains the Overton window, the range of possibilities people consider acceptable, shows how Bitcoin at $1 million has shifted from being a crazy idea to something many now see as inevitable. This psychological shift is particularly powerful because it's happening not just with individual investors, but with large institutions and financial advisors who previously dismissed Bitcoin entirely. They're now being forced to reconsider their position as their clients demand answers about Bitcoin's role in their portfolios. Speaking of institutional adoption, what Trey reveals next about government interest in Bitcoin is eye-opening.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I can't honestly believe, I don't think any of us could have believed like 3-4 years ago that we would be in the position that we are now with the U.S. seriously considering this strategic Bitcoin reserve, and with Putin and all these other global leaders adopting Bitcoin, essentially. Like, again, we're in the super cycle here in terms of adoption. Yeah. The price will be volatile, but
the evidence for this shift in thinking is showing up at the highest levels of global finance and government. When Trey talks about being surprised by how quickly things have changed, he's highlighting something crucial. We're seeing unprecedented adoption by major institutions and nations. Countries like Russia discussing Bitcoin openly and the United States considering it for strategic reserves shows how far we've come from Bitcoin being dismissed as just internet money. This is what makes the current moment so significant. It's not just about price. It's about Bitcoin being recognized as a serious financial tool by world powers. What's particularly interesting is how this shift in thinking has accelerated. Just a few years ago, the idea of nations adopting Bitcoin would have seemed impossible. Now it's being openly discussed in government circles as a strategic asset, demonstrating how quickly the narrative around Bitcoin is evolving at the highest levels. As Bitcoin reaches new heights, let's look at how the critics' arguments have aged.
We've had to fight consistent FUD. Bitcoin is a bubble. Bitcoin's tulips. Tether's manipulating Bitcoin. Bitcoin's too slow. It can't scale.
Yeah, you saw Goldstein's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, that was a powerful video.
It really was. He's been working on that for years. He showed that to me like 2 years ago.
I bet.
I'm ready for
100K.
100,000 Bitcoin.
You don't really have to update it because all the FUD is the same.
Yeah.
There's nothing new under the sun.
No, well,
when it comes to that.
And that's like what like I feel like again like am I over indexing the gravity of like $100,000 as a psychological marker? Because it seems like once you reach six figures, because that's what I said in the newsletter the other night. Is like $100,000 is some. I mean, with inflation where it is, like maybe it's not as respectable as it was 4 or 5 years ago, but $100,000 respectable annual salary in many people's eyes.
Looking at the recycled criticisms Bitcoin has faced helps us understand why this price milestone matters so much. The same people who said Bitcoin would fail at $100, $1,000, and $10,000 are still using the same arguments today. But Bitcoin keeps proving them wrong. The psychological impact of reaching $100,000 is particularly powerful because it's a number people can relate to. It's a good salary in most places. This makes Bitcoin's value more tangible and real to the average person. Even with inflation affecting the purchasing power of $100,000, reaching this level shows Bitcoin's remarkable journey from being worth less than a penny to becoming a serious asset that's catching the attention of world leaders and major financial institutions. What's most telling is how the criticism hasn't evolved. While Bitcoin has grown and developed, its critics are still recycling the same old arguments. This suggests they're running out of meaningful objections as Bitcoin continues to prove itself as a legitimate asset class that's here to stay. The fact that we're now discussing potential government adoption, while critics still call it a bubble, shows just how far ahead the market is compared to the skeptics. What's next for Bitcoin after breaking $100,000? Will this psychological barrier lead to even faster adoption? Or are we due for a cool down? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you found this milestone-breaking analysis interesting, you need to see how Bitcoin is already being adopted in ways that could accelerate its path to $200,000. In my last video, I broke down how Trump's potential treasury pick could revolutionize Bitcoin's role in the U.S. financial system and why this could be the catalyst that takes us to the next level. The connection between government adoption and price action is becoming clearer every day. Click the video on your screen now to understand why these high-level changes could accelerate Bitcoin's rise faster than anyone expects. And if you want to stay ahead of these crucial developments in the future of money, make sure to subscribe to the channel where we break down these important stories every week. Stay humble, stack sats.